Hello, I'm Esther Gitu. You are welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. It's a big day for South Africans as they cast ballots for their next president and legislators in an election seen as most important in over 3 decades. And in our technology report, 12 Ghanaian STEM students participate in the 2024 VEX Robotics Championship in Dallas, Texas. We'll have a report. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. It's election day in South Africa, and voting in an election seen as the country's most important in 30 years is ongoing. The final tally could push the country's young democracy into unknown territory. At stake is the 3-decade dominance of the African National Congress Party, which led South Africa out of apartheid's brutal white minority rule in 1994. It is now the target of a new generation of discontent in a country of 62 million people, half of whom are estimated to be living in poverty. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, the leader of the ANC, is promising to, quote, do better. The election is being held on one day across the country's 9 provinces at more than 23,000 polling stations. Final results are expected by Sunday. Opposition to the ANC in this election is fierce but fragmented. The 2 biggest opposition parties, the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters, are not predicted to increase their vote nearly enough to overtake the ANC. Voters at polling stations across South Africa cited high rates of unemployment and crime, frequent power blackouts and corruption, and hope that the winning party will more effectively address those issues. Tuso Kumalo reports from Johannesburg.
South Africans came out to vote in their thousands in the country's national elections today, in which they are electing members of the national and provincial assemblies. They were all in different moods and had varying reasons why this election is important to them.
Our youth is on drugs, our youth is unemployed, our youth is uneducated, so I'm hoping for more opportunities for the youth to grow.
The reason I'm casting my vote is to keep the ruling party, the current party, because it won't be wise for us to have another party.
I'm feeling excited, it's time for change. So once you have put your cross on the ballot and you are sure that in 3 ballots you have put cross in 1 party, then we are good to go.
Up to 70 political parties are contesting these elections, and political analysts have predicted that the ruling African National Congress Party is likely to get less than 50% of the vote. Counting will start as soon as polls close this evening. Independent Electoral Commission says the elections have been largely smooth and is ready for the counting process.
It's all system go. The counting process is going to take time because we are expecting a lot of, a huge, voter turnout. We are expecting that, we should be ready, to count results when they come in.
The Commission expects to announce the final results by Sunday. Tuso Kumalo for VOA News, Johannesburg.
In Durban, voters expressed their hopes that the party that forms the next government will have the political will to address the issues that are causing frustration to many South Africans. Asma Botmi-Clark has more from Durban.
I hope that the party I voted for wins.
I hope that whoever wins has the political will to actually implement the things they promise people. And that obviously it's violence-free.
People are quite happy to be voting. I think everyone wants something to change and they want to see a difference in the country.
Hopeful but still two-minded. I don't know, it can go either way.
We're just worried about the corruption in this country with regards to rigging of votes and all of that stuff. And if everything is done correctly and done, fairly, we should get a positive outcome.
South African citizens living in Durban have come in numbers to cast their vote. I am standing in front of the voting stations of the city, and as you can see behind me, people are waiting patiently to go and vote. This year's election is crucial because for the first time in 30 years, the ruling party, the African National Congress, could lose its majority. And that is because the population is divided. The younger generation does not feel gratitude or loyalty towards the ANC. This year, more than 27 million people have registered to go and vote. They will be electing 400 members of the National Assembly. These members of parliament will then go on and elect the new president of South Africa. Even though the elections offer a glimmer of hope, most South Africans are in a pretty grim mood. They are fed up with the general state of affairs. We're talking corruption, regular power cuts, water shortages, high unemployment rates and rampant crime. Asma Botmi-Clark, VOA Africa, Durban.
As South Africa is holding its 7th democratic election Wednesday, voters are casting their ballots with both hope and skepticism. Yazid Kalmadian reports.
Sive Dukumbana, a 21-year-old student from Kayamandi in Stellenbosch near Cape Town, was born after South Africa's first democratic elections in 1994. He is among the born-free generation of South Africans who did not have to endure apartheid. He will vote for the first time in the country's election.
I'm really excited to be voting for the first time and casting my vote and having to choose who's gonna rule and run this country.
Tertia du Toit, a chef from Clutersville in Stellenbosch, and her husband Henkie du Toit lived through the era of apartheid prohibitions. They want to use their vote to help bring positive change to the country.
People want a better life, and things are moving slowly, and a lot of people are fed up.
We've got a lot of challenges here in Clutersville, like gangsterism and kids not going to school, and then housing problems. That is why we have to vote.
Sive and his father Siyabulela Dukumbana, an entrepreneur, feel that while voting has opened the door to many South Africans to exercise their democratic rights, it is not enough. They lament the current state of their nation.
I doubt if the democracy is working. We stand long lines for clinics, and honestly speaking, even the nurses don't even take care of us properly to even start. Police stations are empty, crime rates are up.
We are fighting to get electricity. We are fighting to get water. We are fighting to get the basic needs. But we are not supposed to be like that. We are supposed now, if we call it a freedom, we are supposed to, everything is easy.
It has been 30 years since South Africa abandoned apartheid for democracy. Henkie du Toit remembers living through the struggle for liberation, while the born-free Sive Dukumbana questions whether anything has changed.
I went to jail 6 months. I was only 16 years old. I didn't expect more. What I saw is that the white people still don't want to let go of this country, okay? They keep on hanging on there. They are so arrogant. I hate it.
Apart from freedom, I feel like it's still the same, because what's freedom if we still like living in shacks? If we still like need jobs, we still have to beg for jobs. So what's freedom exactly?
Not everybody feels hopeless about where South Africa is now. For some, it's a long road from the bitter past they endured during apartheid.
I can honestly say, for me, this 30 years in democracy, are much better than what I had experienced and encountered when I was a young girl before 1994. I got the opportunity to go study at a college and to got the qualification so that I can at least give my boys a better life than the one that I had.
The World Bank reported in 2022 that South Africa was the most unequal country in the world based on the Gini metric, a statistical distribution of welfare indicators commonly used to measure inequality.
That was Yazid Kamaldien reporting from Cape Town, South Africa. As South Africans vote on Wednesday, analysts say that one of the biggest voting blocs, youth, have remained frustratingly disillusioned throughout the period. VOA's Anthony Labruto spoke to Pumlani Majosi, a South African macroeconomic and political analyst, for more on what's at the top of young South African minds as they cast their ballots.
The most important issue that is affecting the youth at a massive scale is joblessness, right? Right now, as we speak, this week, we got the latest first quarter, 2024 first quarter unemployment numbers. They showed an increase in unemployment, right? It has risen to 32.9%, the unemployment rate in the country. This is just the first quarter of this year, increasing from the last quarter of last year. So it's been very much concerning. It's the highest unemployment rate we have in the world. South Africa does very badly when it comes to employment. And by the way, most of the people affected by unemployment, it's young people, right? Plus 70% of the unemployed, it's young people. The blackouts, electricity or power supply issues, that decimated businesses, right? Especially small businesses. They were really hurt. Many shut down. The economy couldn't grow more than 1% for a very long time in the country. It's always been less than 1% for a long while. In fact, our economy last grew at about 2%, more than 10 years ago, right? So that's just 2%. And guess what? Our population growth rate is around 1.5%. So what's been happening is that we've been having an economy that is underperforming population growth, where you have the population growth much greater than the economic growth. As a result, that leaves us in a situation where we have, our people becoming poorer in terms of, they're becoming more poor in terms of GDP per capita as the economy underperforms the population growth. So those issues are they've really affected young people. The issues of education is very important. Yet the statistics show that we don't have competitive education. Because even when you look at the numbers released last year, they showed that when it comes to learners, young learners, the kids who get basic education, at least 80% of them cannot read for meaning, right? So that is, if we cannot get education right at a very lower level when kids are less than 10 years old, we are going to have some serious problems and challenges over the long term.
That was Pumlani Majosi speaking to VOA's Anthony Labruto. For more on South Africa's election, I'm joined live from Johannesburg by Marisa Lorenzo, a South African political analyst. Marisa, please update us on today's voting and if there were any notable issues.
Hi, Esther. So today has actually gone quite smoothly. I think a lot of people were worried about potential unrest, a high level of demonstrations. A lot of people are quite nervous after the July 2021 riots, after the imprisonment of former President Jacob Zuma. But today has mostly gone off without a hitch. Some reports here and there of a few voting stations opening late. Some voting stations have been were unable to open on time because of service delivery protests taking place in certain areas. But these incidents were very, very few, and for the most part, things have gone according to plan. People are still voting. It's currently 6:45 in South Africa, and booths will officially close at 9 p.m.
Marisa, you mentioned Jacob Zuma. The fallout with the former president, Jacob Zuma, quitting the ruling party has somewhat shaken the African National Congress. What happens if the party does not garner at least 50% of the vote? Marisa, did you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
All right. So you mentioned Jacob Zuma, and I was talking about the fallout with Jacob Zuma quitting the ruling party, the ANC, and it has shaken the party right now. So what happens if the ANC does not garner 50% of the vote?
Sure. So what I wanted to point out was that Jacob Zuma actually has not quit the ANC. He has also not been suspended. So he's actually formally part of two separate political parties, which I think might be a first for the country. I don't think, though, that the party that he started, Umkhonto we Sizwe Party, or MKP, I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on the ANC support on a national level. Where it could eat into the ruling party support is we are not just doing a parliamentary vote or a national vote today, we're also doing a provincial vote. And our provincial governments have quite a lot of power and they have quite a lot of money. And because most of Zuma's support is drawn from KwaZulu-Natal province. It's one of the more contested provinces between the ANC, another opposition party, the Inkatha Freedom Party, and now MKP. That's really where it could eat into the ANC support. But on a national level, I think it's been too disorganized. It's far too new on the scene, and it's not really going to have a really big impact. I don't think it's the biggest headache for the ANC nationally, but perhaps provincially in KwaZulu-Natal province.
And what chances does Julius Malema have in this election?
Well, I mean, we don't have a presidential vote, so we wouldn't really be looking at Malema himself, but we'd be looking at the party, the Economic Freedom Fighters. So currently, the EFF is the third largest political party in South Africa, and so the second largest opposition party. It is facing a challenge from some other smaller opposition parties like the Patriotic Alliance, from a newer party called Action SA. It's managed to, have to hold a chunk in parliament over the last two general elections, but I don't really see it growing at this point. A lot of voters, while they do resonate with the message of the EFF, especially regarding land reform, they've become a bit disillusioned with some of the party's contradictory messaging. So, for example, Malema at one point was advocating for open borders in Africa, but then because of popular sentiment that is actually quite xenophobic towards Black African migrants, he changed his mind on that. So that has harmed the party a little bit. So it should stay as the third largest party in South Africa, but it is in danger of slipping to the fourth largest party, at least nationally.
Marisa, you are a voter today. What changes do South Africans want to see in the coming administration?
So definitely infrastructure is one of the biggest concerns because I think it's well known across the world that, South Africa has a fantastically developed power system, but one that is not generating enough power. And we also have substations that are frequently breaking down. And these power outages affect homes, but they more concerningly affect business, whether small or big business. And this affects the economy, which, has really not grown in almost 2 decades. It's grown at about an average of 1%. So people would definitely like to see a real tangible plan to solve that. And also, I think, an honest timeline. We've been promised many times over the last 3 years that load shedding will be gone in 6 months, which was 2 years ago. So I think honesty and a real plan to fix that. Definitely a clampdown on crime. Crime levels are very high in South Africa, but they're also very violent. And of course, crime disproportionately affects the poor, but there's also a lot of commercial crime that does affect business and that, raises the cost of doing business in the country.
Wow.
And then, of course, there's corruption, which has really been something very, very topical for a long time. And there is a sense that perhaps the ANC has not managed to make much of a difference in that regard.
Right. Marisa, thank you very much for your insight. Marisa Lorenzo is a South African political analyst. Still to come, Ghanaian STEM students participate in the 2024 VEX Robotics Championship. We'll be right back.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, there has been war inside Sudan for a year. Fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces has reduced much of the capital to rubble and displaced millions of people. The country's citizens are now on the verge of a hunger crisis. Can this conflict end peacefully through negotiations? Join me, Vincent Makori, for an in-depth look at the civil war in Sudan on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Did you know that Africa has the highest rate of suicide? And although men are more likely to commit suicide, the rate for women has risen significantly over the past several years, according to the World Health Organization. This week in Our Voices, we'll try to understand why suicide is on the rise and learn what role we can play to prevent it. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, a Sudan oil pipeline ruptured during fighting in February has been repaired and could resume operation in the next 2 weeks, according to a South Sudanese oil ministry official. The Petroda pipeline normally pumps about 100,000 barrels per day. Zimbabwean wildlife authorities are eyeing trophy hunting export markets in the east as some European countries move to ban trophy imports. Belgium in February banned the import of hunting trophies, while British lawmakers in 2023 approved a ban on trophy hunting imports covering 6,000 endangered species. And the U.S. State Department says Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan in 30-minute phone call spoke with Secretary of State Anthony Blinken Tuesday to discuss the need to end the war in Sudan and enable unhindered humanitarian access to alleviate the suffering of the Sudanese people. A team of 12 Ghanaian STEM students earlier this month participated in the 2024 VEX Robotics Championship in Dallas, Texas. This competition is the largest robotics competition in the world, featuring teams from across the world. VOA's Paul Ndiho interviewed 12-year-old Shadrach Dakura about the competition.
I attend Acropolis Maranatha Academy in Ghana, and I've been doing robotics for about 3 years now. This year, we went to the VEX World Robotics Competition in Dallas, Texas, where we went to represent Ghana in the international stage. Our goal was to go further in the competition. Because it's a robotics competition, we had to design, build, code, and drive our robots to score points. The competition I was in was called Full Volume. Our robots had to pick up some cubes, then score them in designated scoring zones. After that, the robots had to park in the supply zone. So our team, we had to cooperate with each other and divide ourselves into 3 groups: the builders, the designers, and the programmers. Each group had their own tasks that they worked on.
How did your final robot perform at the competition?
The name of our robot was Bounty Bots. It performed very well. It was able to collect 12 cubes at a time. It was able to get up to field level 2 in the scoring zone. Our robot was also able to partially park. So we were averaging around 100 points during our competition games. There were many other teams. Other teams were using different designs. The most common designs were robots that used someone like an elevator. When they collected the cubes, then the elevator would go up to score the green cubes. They have to go up again to be able to score the purple cubes. A lot of robots were using that design, and it was not really creative in terms of that design. So that robot was actually my first time handling a robot that big, because last year's robot was not as big as that. The robot this year was using 6 motors, 2 for the drivetrain, 2 for the bucket, and 2 for the intake mechanism. We were able to solve that problem, and everything was able to work smoothly during the time of the competition.
For any young student out there who's watching you, and they want to learn about robots. What can you tell them?
I tell them that they should actually, if they're really interested in it, they should join it. It's a very fun and entertaining program, but it's also very frustrating because failure is part of the process. So if they're not the kind of person that is used to failure, I think they should really take some time back and reconsider the option of joining robotics.
Look at you already talking about failure. That's impressive. How did you get into robots yourself?
So one day when I was coming home from school, somebody who works with Bountiful Technologies were giving out flyers for the robotics. And because my elder brother did robotics some years back, I was actually interested in it when I was about 6 years old. And Bountiful Technologies gave me the opportunity to start learning it for myself.
So do you have like a computer at home where you do robotics, or you just go to Bountiful Technologies? That's why you do it.
So I have a computer at home and a kit at home where I do my own personal builds and creations. But I have Saturday classes at a center that is hosted by Bountiful Technologies, where we prepare for the competition and I meet with my other teammates.
You're 12 years old. And at 12 years old, you're already participating in international competitions. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel very happy and very proud of myself, because this just proves that age doesn't really matter. As long as you have the interest in it, you can actually perform well.
Tell me about the group. How many people were in the group?
In total, in the group that went to America, we were 22. And we were separated into the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. I was in the elementary team. In the elementary team, we were about 9 in the team over there. But other kids my age from different countries. There were even a lot of other people from Africa who also went to the competition.
Which countries specifically?
So Uganda was there, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Algeria, and Ethiopia. Also in Morocco.
Interesting. And how did those countries perform?
Some of them performed very well, like Nigeria. Others didn't do so well.
Is this something that you see yourself doing even next year?
I see myself doing this for a long time because it's a pathway to the job I want to pursue in the future, which is biomedical engineering.
Very nice. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too for your time.
That was 12-year-old Shadrach Dakura in Accra, Ghana, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndeho. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.